Chairing Challenging Meetings, a professional development workshop on advanced meeting facilitation. Dr. Marco Bianchi is leading a session on handling challenging meeting scenarios. Participants include managers and team leaders from various organizations.
Good morning, everyone. In this session, we'll focus on strategies for chairing challenging meetings, those situations where standard facilitation techniques may not be enough. Before we dive in, I'd like to hear about your experiences. What specific challenges have you encountered when chairing meetings?
In my department, we have a few very dominant personalities who tend to take over discussions. Less assertive team members rarely get a chance to contribute, even when they have valuable insights.
My challenge is keeping discussions on track. We often start with a clear agenda, but conversations frequently go off on tangents, and before we know it, the meeting time is gone and we haven't addressed the key issues.
I struggle with meetings where there's underlying tension or conflict between participants. Sometimes these conflicts aren't directly expressed but create a difficult atmosphere that prevents productive discussion.
Thank you for sharing these challenges. They're actually very common, and they represent three of the key areas we'll address today: managing participation dynamics, maintaining focus, and handling conflict. Let's start with participation dynamics.
When certain participants dominate while others remain silent, the meeting loses access to the group's full expertise and perspective. As chair, you need to actively manage this dynamic rather than hoping it will naturally balance itself. For dominant participants, several techniques can be effective. First, establish clear ground rules at the start of the meeting that emphasize balanced participation. You might say,
To ensure we benefit from everyone's expertise, I'd like to hear from all participants on key issues before we go into deeper discussion.
Second, use directed questioning to bring in quieter voices. Rather than asking general questions to the whole group, which dominant personalities will quickly answer, direct specific questions to individuals.
Elena, from your experience in operations, what challenges do you see with this approach?
Third, use structured participation techniques that ensure everyone contributes. Round-robin approaches, where you systematically go around the group for input, prevent domination. Similarly, techniques like silent writing, where everyone writes ideas before discussing them, can equalize participation.
I've tried asking quieter team members for their input, but they often give very brief responses, and then the dominant people jump back in. How can I encourage deeper contribution from reluctant participants?
That's an excellent question. When quieter participants give brief responses, use follow-up questions to draw out their thinking. That's an interesting point, Eleanor. Could you expand on how that might affect our production process? Or,
What specific examples have you seen of that issue? It's also helpful to acknowledge and build on their contributions. Elena's point about training requirements raises an important consideration we haven't discussed yet. This reinforces the value of their input and encourages further participation. Sometimes the meeting format itself inhibits participation. In these cases, consider breaking into smaller groups for part of the discussion. Many people who are reluctant to speak in a large meeting will contribute actively in a group of 3 or 4. Let's move to our second challenge: maintaining focus and preventing digressions. This requires both preventive measures and real-time interventions.
preventively, a well-designed agenda with clear objectives for each topic creates a shared understanding of what needs to be accomplished. Time allocations for each item signal their relative importance and create helpful constraints. During the meeting, several techniques help maintain focus. First, frame each topic with a clear statement of the specific objective.
For this item, we need to identify the top 3 quality risks and agree on mitigation actions for each.
When digressions occur, and they will, assess quickly whether the digression might actually be valuable. Sometimes apparent digressions reveal important issues that should be addressed. If the digression isn't productive, redirect gently but clearly.
That's an interesting point about the supplier certification process, but it takes us away from our current focus on the quality metrics. Could we capture that for our supplier discussion next month and return to the metrics?
The parking lot is an invaluable tool for managing digressions. This is simply a visible place, whiteboard, flip chart, or shared document, where you record important issues that arise but aren't relevant to the current discussion. This acknowledges the value of the point while maintaining focus.
What about when the digression comes from a senior leader or someone you can't easily interrupt? That's a common challenge. When the digression comes from someone senior, you need a respectful approach that honors their contribution while protecting the meeting's purpose. One effective technique is to acknowledge the value of their point while suggesting a way to address it that doesn't derail the current discussion. That's a significant strategic question you're raising, Director Chen. Given its importance, would you be open to scheduling a dedicated discussion on that topic after we complete our current agenda? I'm concerned we won't do it justice in the time we have today. Alternatively, you can connect their point back to the current topic. Thank you for that perspective, Director Chen. How do you see that relating to our current decision about the quality metrics? The key is to be respectful, but still maintain your role as guardian of the meeting process. Most senior leaders will appreciate this if done tactfully, especially when they understand you're protecting the meeting's effectiveness. Now let's address our third challenge: managing meetings with tension or conflict. These situations require careful facilitation to prevent unproductive conflict while still allowing necessary disagreement.
First, it's important to distinguish between cognitive conflict, disagreement about ideas, approaches, or interpretations, and affective conflict, personal tensions or negative emotions between participants. Cognitive conflict can be highly valuable for decision quality if properly facilitated. Affective conflict is almost always detrimental and needs to be addressed. When facilitating discussions with cognitive conflict, establish ground rules that encourage respectful disagreement.
We want to hear different perspectives and challenge assumptions, but always focusing on issues rather than individuals.
Frame disagreement as valuable.
These different viewpoints are helping us see multiple dimensions of a complex issue. Let's explore the underlying concerns on both sides.
Use structured approaches to explore different perspectives.
Let's take 2 minutes to list the potential benefits of this approach, then 2 minutes for potential concerns before we discuss further.
What about situations where there's clearly personal tension between participants that's affecting the meeting?
When effective conflict or personal tension is present, you have several options depending on the severity and context.
For mild tensions, simply enforcing ground rules about respectful communication and focusing on issues rather than personalities may be sufficient. Redirecting the conversation to objective criteria and shared goals can also help depersonalize discussions. For more significant tensions that are disrupting the meeting, you might need a direct intervention.
I'm noticing some tension in our discussion that's making it difficult to focus on the issues. Could we take a 5-minute break and then reset our conversation, focusing specifically on the decision criteria?
In some cases, the conflict needs to be addressed outside the meeting. You might say,
I can see we have some different perspectives on this issue that we won't resolve in our remaining time. Carlos and Elena, could you meet separately to discuss your concerns and bring a joint recommendation to our next meeting?
for recurring tension between specific individuals, consider speaking with them privately outside the meeting to understand the underlying issues and explore how to work together more effectively.
Let me share one final challenge that many chairs face. The meeting that needs to make a decision but gets stuck in circular discussion or analysis paralysis.
When a decision is needed but the group seems reluctant to commit, several techniques can help. First, clarify the decision-making method in advance.
We need to decide on our approach by the end of this meeting. We'll aim for consensus, but if we can't reach it, I'll ask for a recommendation that I'll make the final decision on.
Second, structure the decision process explicitly.
Let's first confirm our decision criteria, then evaluate our options against those criteria, and finally select the approach that best meets our needs.
Third, use time boxing to create helpful constraints.
We have 20 minutes remaining to make this decision. Let's use 10 minutes to address any remaining concerns and 10 minutes to finalize our approach.
Finally, be willing to name the dynamic if the group is stuck.
I notice we've been circling around this issue for some time without moving forward. What's making this decision difficult for us? Are there additional information or perspectives we need?
These are helpful strategies, but what about when you're chairing a virtual or hybrid meeting? Those seem to have additional challenges.
You're absolutely right. Virtual and hybrid meetings present unique challenges that require adapted facilitation techniques.
For virtual meetings, establish clear protocols for participation, how to indicate you want to speak, whether cameras should be on, how to use chat features, etc. More active facilitation is typically needed, with explicit invitations for input and more frequent check-ins to ensure engagement. Visual management becomes even more important in virtual settings. Shared screens, digital whiteboards, or collaborative documents help create a common focus and enable more equal participation. In hybrid meetings, where some participants are in person and others remote, the biggest challenge is ensuring equal participation. Remote participants are often at a disadvantage, as in-room conversations can naturally dominate. Counter this by deliberately engaging remote participants first on each topic, ensuring they can hear and be heard clearly, and using digital collaboration tools that put everyone on equal footing.
To summarize our discussion, effective chairing of challenging meetings requires
1. Active management of participation dynamics to ensure all voices are heard. 2. Clear techniques for maintaining focus while acknowledging valuable digressions. 3rd, thoughtful approaches to navigating both cognitive and affective conflict. 4. Structured decision processes when groups struggle to reach conclusions. 5. Adapted techniques for virtual and hybrid contexts.
Remember that chairing is both a science and an art. The techniques we've discussed provide structure, but your judgment in applying them, knowing when to redirect firmly versus when to allow exploration, when to address conflict directly versus when to let the group work through it, is equally important. With practice and reflection, you'll develop not just a toolkit of facilitation techniques, but the wisdom to apply them effectively in diverse situations. The result will be meetings that not only accomplish their objectives, but also strengthen relationships and build your organization's collaborative capacity. Are there any other specific challenges or scenarios you'd like to discuss before we wrap up?